On the 16th of October 1946, the former foreign minister of Nazi Germany was sent crashing through the trapdoor of the gallows within Nuremberg prison's gymnasium. The executioner that day, John C. Woods, made a real mess of the proceedings, and he bungled his way through the 10 men's executions that he performed. Joachim von Ribbentrop was the first man who was executed that day, and before the Second World War broke out, he was very well known across the world. He even signed a treaty with the Soviet dictator, Stalin, in which he opposed hostilities with the Soviet Union, but of course Hitler would later rip this up and launch the largest invasion in military history. As the war went on, von Ribbentrop's influence was significantly reduced, but he was still tried at Nuremberg as a significant aggressor in the whole of the Second World War, and he was viewed as someone who helped to start the deadliest conflict in human history. But what happened inside the execution chamber that led to his execution going very wrong? To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Joachim von Ribbentrop was born in April 1893 inside the Kingdom of Prussia. He attended courses at Germany's most powerful fortress as a young man and became fluent in French and English. He was, however, referred to as the most stupid in his class, full of vanity and very pushy by his teacher. His family moved to different countries, but Ribbentrop was then sent to Britain to improve his English, and he even travelled to Canada to work for an engineering firm there. But as the First World War broke out, he left Canada and lived briefly inside of America before returning to Europe, and he enlisted in the German army. He served on both the Eastern and Western Front and was awarded the Iron Cross as he was wounded. He became a staff officer in Turkey, and after the hostilities ceased, he married his wife Anna. But in 1928, Joachim von Ribbentrop first met Adolf Hitler, and he was working as a businessman at the time. He was a champagne salesman and was seen as someone who could get the same price for German champagne as he could for French champagne, which was of course much more valuable. This chance meeting with Hitler began his political career, and in May 1932 he joined the Nazi Party officially. He was to begin with an emissary for the Chancellor of Germany Franz von Papen, and through political manipulations he rose through the ranks and affections in the eyes of the new Nazis. The old Nazis didn't like him, and he was said to have been the Nazi almost all of the other leading Nazis hated, and Hitler's propaganda chief, Joseph Goebbels, claimed in his diary that von Ribbentrop brought his name, he married his money, and swindled his way into office. He did have access to Hitler at any time, and could meet with him freely, and he became Hitler's favourite advisor on foreign policy. Others have claimed that he knew nothing, and was just a lackey who pleased Hitler. For example, it was said, when Hitler said grey, Ribbentrop said black, black, black. He always said 3 times more, and he was more radical. I listened to what Hitler said one day when Ribbentrop wasn't present. With Ribbentrop, it is so easy, he's always so radical. Meanwhile, all the other people I have, they come here, they have problems, they are afraid, they think we should take care, and then I have to blow them up to get strong. And Ribbentrop was blowing up the whole day, and I had to do nothing. I had to break. Much better. Whatever Hitler said, Ribbentrop would agree and go stronger, saying more radical action needed doing, and this led to him becoming the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Policy later. He had been named the Special Commissioner for Disarmament, and in this his job was to show the world that Germany wanted to limit their army and arms productions, all while secretly they were building them up and building up supplies for a later world war. In 1936 he was appointed the ambassador to the United Kingdom, with orders from Hitler to negotiate an alliance between the Germans and the British. He presented himself to King Edward VIII, who was very impressed, and in London he lived a very lavish life, staying in the best hotels and mixing in the circles of the royal family. He would even later, during one incident, give King George VI a Nazi salute, which almost knocked the king over, who was attempting to shake Ribbentrop's hand. But he was considered a bully, and someone who was ice-cold in meetings, and he later came to hate Britain. With his appointment in 1938 to the position of Foreign Minister, von Ribbentrop's role in the Nazi government was vital, and it showed that foreign policy was becoming more and more radical, and was moving towards war, and Ribbentrop supported this. To begin with, he tried to convince a number of nations to ally themselves with the Nazis, but he was a key player in the beginning of the Second World War. He pushed for the beginning of the hostilities quicker than they came, and he ensured that Hitler viewed Britain as the main enemy of the Reich, and his greatest diplomatic coup was in even convincing Stalin to sign the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. This stated that there would be no fighting between the two for 10 years, and it brought the Nazis some vital time in building up their arms to later go and fight on the Eastern Front. Ribbentrop also spoke to Hitler at length about invading Poland, and he believed that the French and English would not go to war if the Nazis invaded Poland. Of course, this is not what happened, and Ribbentrop, following the outbreak of World War II, spent a lot of time travelling with Hitler in Poland and then visiting Moscow. Even inside of Italy and Benito Mussolini's government, he was disliked and viewed as untrustworthy. Mussolini would later enter the war on the side of the Nazis, but Ribbentrop, to begin with, was also against the Nazis attacking the Soviet Union. This may have been because he viewed an invasion of the Union as an attack on his diplomatic successes, but he viewed Britain as the greater enemy. He was involved in the Holocaust, and he tried to persuade leaders of Nazi puppet states to deport Jewish people to Nazi extermination centres. But as the war went on, von Ribbentrop's influence declined. The Nazis were at war with many different countries, meaning he was not needed to negotiate anything of significance, and they had diplomatic relations with only a small percentage of the nations that they formerly had. Hitler also began to avoid him and thought he was tiresome. But on the 20th of July 1944, a bomb would explode inside of Hitler's Wolf-Lair headquarters, injuring him, and many of Ribbentrop's former diplomats were involved in the coup attempt and assassination attempt on Hitler. He didn't know about the plot, but the involvement of members of his foreign ministry reflected badly upon him, but he did work with the SS to purge and execute those in the Foreign Office who had been involved in the coup. Goering, in the hours following, threatened to smack Ribbentrop with his marshal's baton, referring to him as a dirty little champagne salesman. He was present at the final birthday of Adolf Hitler in Berlin on the 20th of April 1945, but 3 days later he tried to meet with Hitler but was rebuffed, saying the dictator, who was holed up inside of his bunker whilst the city was beginning to crumble, had better and more important things to do. After Hitler died inside of his bunker, Ribbentrop tried to find a new job inside of the new government of the Reich under Karl Dönitz. He went into hiding under a false name in Hamburg, but he was arrested by a Frenchman who had joined the Belgian SAS. On his person was a letter addressed to Winston Churchill, but he was then brought to the Nuremberg trials as a defendant. He was convicted of all 4 counts: crimes against peace, deliberately planning a war of aggression, committing war crimes, and crimes against humanity. It was even said he was involved in the annexation of Austria into the Nazi Reich and was also a key player in the invasions of Czechoslovakia and Poland. He was also implicated in the final solution, encouraging countries in the Axis alliance to speed up their deportations of Jews to the death camps. Von Ribbentrop was also said to have been encouraging the murder of Allied airmen and have been responsible for a number of atrocities in the conflict. He tried to claim that Hitler made all the important decisions, and he still remained loyal to Hitler whilst behind bars. He was for his crimes sentenced to death and was seen as one of the major aggressors of the Second World War, a conflict which led to the deaths of millions. He was scheduled initially to be the second Nazi executed in the Nuremberg executions, but Hermann Goering, the former Reich Marshal, took his life hours before he was to be sent through the gallows. Because of this, Joachim von Ribbentrop was bumped up to the first position, the first man to be hanged at the Nuremberg executions, inside the gymnasium of Nuremberg prison. The executioner that day was John C. Woods, a bungling and botching executioner who would make a significant mess of the proceedings. There were many issues with the executions. Firstly, the gallows was not fit for purpose. The trapdoor was too small, allowing the condemned to not pass through the structure properly, to snap their necks instantly, and Woods did not use the long drop, but the standard drop method to execute the men. Also, the trapdoor had a tendency to not latch when it opened, meaning it smashed the defendants on the head, leading to them becoming bloodied following the trap being opened. Woods also miscalculated things and it's not known how much, if any, he prepared for the proceedings, and he probably didn't do anything special at all. With regards to the execution process, it was stated that the 10 once great men in Hitler's Reich, that was to have lasted 1,000 years, walked up the 13 steps of the gallows to a platform 8 feet high, which was also 8 feet square. Ropes were suspended from a crossbeam, supported on 2 posts. A new one was used for each man. When the trap was sprung, the victim dropped from sight in the interior of the scaffolding. The bottom of it was boarded up with wood on 3 sides and shielded by a dark canvas curtain on the 4th, so that no one saw the death struggles of the men dangling with broken necks. Joachim von Ribbentrop's execution was witnessed by some who had gathered inside the execution chamber. It was said by one witness of his execution that von Ribbentrop entered the execution chamber at 11 minutes past 1 a.m. Nuremberg time. He was stopped immediately inside the door by 2 army sergeants who closed in on each side of him and held his arms, while another sergeant who had followed him in removed the manacles from his hands and replaced them with a leather strap. It was planned originally to permit the condemned men to walk from their cells to the execution chamber with their hands free, but all were manacled following Goering's death. Von Ribbentrop was able to maintain his apparent stoicism to the last. He walked steadily towards a scaffold between his 2 guards, but he did not answer at first when an officer standing at the foot of the gallows went through the formality of asking his name. When the query was repeated, he almost shouted Joachim von Ribbentrop, and then mounted the steps without any sign of hesitation. When he was turned around on the platform to face the witnesses, he seemed to clench his teeth and raise his head with the old arrogance. When asked whether he had any final message, he said, "God protect Germany," in German, and then added, "May I say something else?" The interpreter nodded, and the former diplomatic wizard of Nazism spoke his last words in loud, firm tones. "My last wish is that Germany realise its entity and that an understanding be reached between the East and West. I wish peace to the world." As the black hood was placed in position on his head, von Ribbentrop looked straight ahead. Then the hangman adjusted the rope, pulled the lever, and von Ribbentrop slipped away to his fate. It took 14 minutes for Joachim von Ribbentrop to die on the gallows, and he kicked and struggled for some time behind the curtain. This was a very long time for someone to be dangling from the gallows, and he slowly slipped away over 14 minutes. He was the foreign minister of the Nazi Party, who had manoeuvred his way into power skillfully, but he was someone who tried to bully other nations into allying themselves with the Nazis, or at least serving them. But inside of the execution chamber of Nuremberg prison's gymnasium, Joachim von Ribbentrop became the first executed Nuremberg Nazi. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.